Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am here with Congresswoman Becca Balint from Vermont. Congresswoman, first, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me this morning and be here with all of these viewers. It's going to be an important conversation, and I am personally really honored to have you here.
Well, I feel the same way. You and I have known each other for years. I'm glad that we could have this conversation.
We have. I had to pull up the year actually because it feels like it's been decades since 2018.
Yes.
But I had the honor of working with then Senator Balint in the Vermont legislature on Vermont's, at the time, really groundbreaking sexual harassment law that was passed. Worked closely with her and with then Representative Sarah Copeland-Hanzas, who is now our Secretary of State. So amazing to see both of these women accomplish great things since then. So again, thank you for being here this morning. You joined Congress in a different time. Joe Biden was president. There seemed to be hope in the air that we were going to turn the tide back, get the country, whatever metaphor you want to use, get us back on track. And here we are, just a couple of years later. Can you tell us what is the state of, I can't imagine what it's like to be a member of Congress right now, as divided as things are and seemingly working with the Republican Party that's in power, completely detached from reality and the true concerns and welfare of the American people.
Yeah, it's dystopian, Lisa. It really feels like sometimes we are in an Orwell book, 1984, Animal Farm. You go into committee and you are interacting with people who clearly do not believe in the Constitution, do not believe in the separation of powers, who are there in the service of one man. And when you're there in the service of one man, then that means you are supportive of autocrats, dictators, authoritarianism. And in some ways, I knew what I was getting into because I knew Trumpism had not been defeated. And when I was running for Congress, I remember being asked in one of the debates, what did I think was the biggest threat globally? And I said the rise of authoritarianism, that we could see it in countries across the globe. And we could see that at that time, you had President Trump and then former President Trump and now President Trump again. He celebrates autocrats. He celebrates dictators. That is what he has been so public about wanting for himself. And to watch my colleagues, I'm not generally someone who's a name caller, but I have lost my ability to communicate this moment without saying they are bootlickers right now. They are kissing the ring. They are bending the knee. They are doing whatever they need to do in the service of this man and not in the service of the country and not in the service of their constituents. And so much of what's happening in Congress right now is not to the benefit of regular working people across this country. I don't care if you're in, a rural red state or if you're in a rural part of Vermont. The trade wars, the tariffs, they are not good for working people. They're not good for small businesses. They're decimating small businesses across the country. And so when you look at what they're spending their time on right now, it is not at all in the interest of regular people. And they're getting away with it because they are firing up a base of people that are angry and fearful, anxious and aggrieved. And they're distracting them constantly with made up enemies, right? Whether it's migrants, immigrants, trans people, we can talk about their attacks on the LGBTQ community, attacks on higher ed, everyone's an enemy right now. That is not sustainable for a nation that believes in the ideals of freedom and free expression. And so it's really difficult emotionally, psychologically to see that day in and day out. and to know a large percentage of the people in the Republican conference do not believe what they're saying. And they are doing it so that they are not in the crosshairs. They don't want to be tweeted about. They don't want to be, it's not outrageous to assume that they would be physically attacked, because we saw what happened on January 6th, and we saw that President Trump let out all of the people who attacked police at the Capitol. And here's the thing that I don't think got enough news. The day after Trump let out the insurrectionists, many of them came to the Capitol and they sat up in the gallery and watched us do our work. So he is doing the work of bullying, having a chilling effect. But it takes a lot of mental discipline for me to do my job every day and to stay taking my rage, my anger, my fear, and channeling it into focus, because that's what's needed of me in this moment. But it does take a toll. It does. Yeah.
It does, but you do the work anyway. I've watched some of your floor speeches, obviously the interviews that you're doing. You're very public in your opposition. I wish there were more Democratic members of Congress in both the House and Senate who are doing what you're doing, and I appreciate that it's scary. I mean, everybody at Lincoln Square and the Lincoln Project,
you're sticking your necks out.
It's scary.
That's what's required in this moment. Yeah.
We know history has shown us, you have family history.
Yes.
I'm sure you look back on that tells us silence is not safety. It does, bending the knee is not safety. No. We see that over and over again. We're seeing it now, even with these law firms who are being willing to bend. They're already being asked for the next concession.
Of course they are. Could we not see that coming?
Right. Yeah. It always does. There is no loyalty that comes from Trump. You can be loyal to him. That means nothing to him.
Yes.
Unless the loyalty never stops. And to him, the definition of loyalty is you acquiesce to whatever it is he's asking for.
Right. Whether it's illegal, whether it's nonsense, whether, it's so clear he doesn't know, the incompetence also, the incompetence and the corruption of this administration, right, as well. And
staggering.
Yeah, it is. And what you say is true. I do think about it all the time. So just briefly for folks who are meeting me for the first time. So my grandfather, his name was Leopold Balint. He was killed in the very last few weeks of the Holocaust, last few weeks of World War II, when his camp was emptied out by the Nazis. They were on a forced march to try to outrun the Allies. It was the very last camp liberated, actually. And on that forced march, he stayed behind to help another prisoner who was ailing, and they were both executed. And that story, that family history, has ridden me my whole life, because the question for me had always been, what would I do in the midst of depravity? What would I do? Would I stand up? Would I, in that moment, retain my humanity? Because that's what he did in that moment. He retained his humanity in the midst of everything. The right thing to do is to help this person. And he lost his life for it. Now, obviously, for me in this moment, I am thinking about all of those small things that we can do to show our courage, not lose our humanity, to stand up to dictators, to stand up to sycophants. And, as you and I were discussing before we went live, when you are courageous, the fear doesn't go away. It's not as if you decide you're going to be brave, and then in that moment you lose your fear. No, the fear is always going to be there. It's scary. And so when constituents say to me, oh, well, I'm so glad that you do this job because I would never be that brave. I'm just like, I'm sorry. this moment requires all of us to be brave in our own ways, whether it's talking to people who don't agree with us, whether it is showing up in spaces with people who have a different political view, whether it's talking to strangers or posting the truth about something online, whatever it is not a time when we can go along to get along. And that's true for individual citizens, certainly for folks who are in elected office, but also, as you said, the folks who are in powerful law firms, the people who are at educational institutions. This is a moment that is going to require great things from each of us. We have to show up with our best selves. And I always say, do what you can when you can, then regroup, because it's exhausting work. I will tell you, it's exhausting work. You do what you can when you can, but keep the main thing, which is not tearing down each other. Whether it's trans people, whether it's immigrants, migrants, whether it is, name the enemy of the day, essentially, from women, it's always women with this administration, right? The main thing is that this administration is trying to pit us against each other so we do not see its corruption, its incompetence, and the fact that they want to operate as an authoritarian regime that is not bound by the rule of law. That's terrifying. We should be scared. We should be anxious, but it should not paralyze us. And one of the reasons why I do those speeches on the floor, even though it's scary to do, and why I speak up in committee, I am trying to nurture that bravery and courage in others. Every single time.
We say here a lot, courage is contagious.
It is.
Right? If you see other people around you standing up,
yes,
it gives other people the courage, because of this very tired but very true truism, there is safety in numbers. And it is something that the public has to embrace. And it's something that the Republicans in Congress needed to embrace starting in 2015. And they still haven't, and the media has to embrace it.
Yes.
There was it's now viral. Lisa Murkowski did a town hall. She was asked by an obviously very worried, scared constituent, we're scared, what should we do? And the senator's response was, we're all scared. I'm scared. Retribution is real. But that's all the more reason why we have to speak up in this time. If our members, if our elected leaders on all levels aren't willing to do this, what pressure can the American people be putting on them to make them stand up and step forward?
Yes. And so obviously, I am someone who's a strong believer in having constituents reach out to their elected officials, calling the office, emailing the office, also demanding more of all of our elected officials, not just folks in Congress. Because to your point, that courage is contagious. Elected officials, whether it's state, town, whether it is House members, state legislature members, we need to hear from them that they believe in the rule of law, that they believe in the separation of powers, and that we each have a role to play in this. And what's been interesting for me is watching sort of who people think are sort of the heroes of this moment. And I think a lot about how we cultivate courage and bravery. I spend an inordinate amount of time every day trying to figure out this puzzle, both for my constituents, but also for my Republican colleagues and for folks within my own caucus. And what I've come to is that people think that there is only one way in which to publicly show courage. And so we love celebrity in this country. Okay, we do. We love celebrity. And sometimes when people say to me, well, who are your political heroes? It's often the people who are the ones with the biggest social media followings. Now, there is a lane for that, and that's important, and that does move people. But there are other lanes that we also need heroes in, and that is the backbenchers, the workhorses, the people day in and day out who are in committee going toe-to-toe with Republicans who are trying to undo the democracy. I'm thinking of people like Jim McGovern, who is a rep in Massachusetts. He's on the Rules Committee. He goes toe-to-toe every single week. He's not a household name, but he is saving us from the worst of things in the Rules Committee. I'm thinking about folks like Jill Takuda. She's a representative from Hawaii who she was elected or named one of the most effective members of Congress. Again, nobody knows her name, but she's doing the work of saving Medicaid in rural areas. And so what I want people to understand is your hero may not be the hero of folks in another district, but that doesn't mean that that person isn't also doing work. And as I was saying to you earlier, that Bernie and AOC are doing this tour, which is great. It's bringing out a lot of people. It's moving a lot of people to show up. Are they going to be the messengers for everyone within the Democratic coalition, or for folks who are moderate Republicans, or people who just know that they don't want to be fascists? Like, they've been Republicans.
That's a big tent, right?
No fascists, right? We have to stop expecting perfection of each other. And this is something that there's a fire lit under me. A couple weeks after the election, I did a call-in show for C-SPAN, and calls come in from around the country, and there's a Republican phone line, Democratic phone line, and independent phone line. You don't know who you're going to get, right? And you answer the calls. This one woman called, and she was calling on the Democratic line. And she said, this is terrible. Trump's reelection, he's going to be worse this time around. I'm very anxious. I'm worried about, all of the ways in which he's going to destroy government. And she goes on and on. And then she says, but I didn't vote. I didn't vote in this election. And I didn't vote for Kamala Harris, and I didn't vote. I didn't show up. I didn't vote in my local elections. I said, okay. So I said, talk me through that. I need to understand more. Like, you knew it was going to be really bad and you didn't show up. And she said, well, I feel like Democrats have forgotten how to listen deeply. I feel like Democrats are always trying to be the smartest people in the room, that they show up with a smugness. And instead of getting defensive, I pointed out the ways in which, both parties can be really smug and tone deaf, right? I said, but I hear you. Like, let me take that and not get defensive and think about, how do we show up better for people in this country? And I think part of that showing up better is not excluding people all the time because we need people to be with us 100% of the time. No, that's not the human condition. Even your friends, you don't agree with them 100% of the time. Your family, you certainly don't agree with them 100% of the time, but you still, you still do things with them. And I think this is a moment where we have to have sort of a basic set of things that we agree on. We agree in the Constitution. We agree in the 3 branches of government. We agree that people who are here legally should not be shipped off to penal colonies in El Salvador. Like, we agree on some basic things. And we can disagree on economic policy. We can disagree on all these things. But where we are at right now is we must build a broad coalition across party line, across geographic diversity. We need to bring men and women together across this country to reject what we're seeing right now. And it's not going to be from eliminating people from our tent.
Right.
Does that make sense? And I'm a progressive Democrat, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have friends across the ideological spectrum within the Democratic caucus. And I learn from them. Tell me what's happening in your district that votes much more blue doggy, or let me learn from you. You've got a swing district. What are you hearing from your constituents about? And so we have to win. Right. We have to win, right? We have to win the midterms to help blunt this, right? And to do that, we need a broad coalition. So I'm not looking for perfection.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that so many people still do. The litmus tests are killing us. They're killing our democracy, and they have to go away. We can't even have a litmus test of party identification.
Yeah.
Our litmus test at this point needs to be, do you support autocracy and fascism, or do you support democracy? That's it. You say democracy, come on in. I have deeply held beliefs on social issues that I will fight like hell for. But the baseline has to be, I can't fight with a person who supports fascism about policy issues. That's not, we have to establish a two-party. We don't have two democracy believing parties in this country any longer. And we can't treat the Republican Party like it is one of those things. It is.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think people are afraid to admit that because it's terrifying. And it's one of the reasons why I have such a hard time with the way that so much of the news is being framed right now, because so many of our outlets are framing it as if this is legitimate discourse that we're hearing from this administration. It's not. And when they couch the headlines in, words that are not as straightforward as Trump lies and says he has the authority to do this. He doesn't, right? Like, it has to be that clear. And I think people worry about losing access, to people, whether it's, coming on their talk shows or, certainly we can talk about the whole billionaire class right now that, also bent a need to have access. That, as you said, there has to be a bottom line. Do you believe in this experiment that we have in democracy? This is an idea. Democracy is an idea. Several hundred years old. Are we going to keep it? In order to keep it, you have to have some lines in the sand that, no, actually, we don't believe that it's okay to ship people off without due process.
Well, that gets into the next thing that we have to talk about before I lose you in 5 minutes. And that is the lack of due process and the false sense of security that I think people in left-leaning states or blue controlled states have had up until recently. And I think that's been very true in Vermont, but we have had two people, one woman who was brought to Vermont, taken to Louisiana, brought back to Vermont. No criminal charges against her. She is
very important that we say that again.
Yes,
no criminal charges.
And that is also true of Madawi, who has been living in the state of Vermont for 10 years.
That's right.
He's a Columbia student. He was living in Vermont at the time of his, it's not an arrest because there are no charges. At the time of his abduction by government employees,
hooded in unmarked cars. Okay. This is dystopian, people.
Who had been lured to what he thought was going to be a meeting for the next step in his citizenship. He is a green card holder. He has been not accused of any crime, and he is currently being held in the men's state prison in Vermont.
This is happening under our eyeballs. This is happening
our eyeballs in blue states. And so can you talk to us some about first what can be done both in his situation, obviously what's happening in El Salvador, but we are not safe at this point because we thought we had the safety of the blue dot that we live in.
Exactly. So a couple things. it's really important that we all stand with these people. And it really doesn't matter what your stance is on immigration and migration. It doesn't matter. To that, like, what's basic level, we do not believe people should be rounded up, detained with no charges against them, have no access to a lawyer, have no due process. We believe that regardless of status, okay? We have to put pressure on the folks who are responsible for this in the administration. So I have demanded answers from Marco Rubio and for Kristi Noem. What they are doing is not in line with the law. They need to certify that these folks are a threat to our foreign interests, and they need to outline it. It's not just some vague idea. Like, they need to tell us. And when they don't do that, then that's going to be my next move, is figuring out how do I continue to push. And I know a number of us are looking into taking a CODEL down to El Salvador, though we've heard that our government will not fund that, even though we are members of Congress who are entitled to demand answers. But look, I had a woman ask me the other day at the end of my town hall. She is a woman of color. She's a naturalized citizen. She said to me, "Do you think it's safe for me to go to protests publicly, knowing that I am a woman of color who's a naturalized citizen?" I said, "No." And I almost burst into tears. I said, "I can't believe I'm saying this in my country, but this is when we need other people to show up on their behalf." And I'm making this plea here in Vermont, but also I know you have viewers outside of Vermont, wherever you are. We need people to put some skin in the game and give cover to these people who could be the next people disappeared. Okay? That's the reality of where we're at. It's not hyperbolic at all. And we can do this. We can have a political movement. We have seen this happen around the world. It's not some pie in the sky moment, but we need critical mass. We have to stand together. We really do. And we can argue about immigration policy afterwards. Right now, it's about the rule of law and due process, and believing that we all, in the boundaries of this country, are entitled to those things. That's what makes us Americans. That's what makes us freedom-loving people. If we lose that, the entire democracy falls apart.
And it's not just the Democrats who lose it. It's not just immigrants who lose it. It's everybody.
Exactly.
And people who are not Democrats, whatever your other political affiliation is, they have to, we have to educate them. We have to be willing to have difficult conversations with people. We need to be able to, we have to speak out whenever we get the opportunity, as you do, because it's all of us. If some of us aren't safe, then none of us are safe in this country. And we have to be a country where people feel they have safety to live their lives, and we can get back to that again. And
exactly.
Yeah. And because of people like you, Congresswoman, I almost called you Becca. People like you.
Becca, you've known me for years. It's okay. Yeah. You know, I just want to sort of highlight something for folks. You know, as an openly gay woman, as someone of Jewish descent, I am on the receiving end of a lot of hatred, a lot of it, but it doesn't prevent me from showing up. As a woman in politics, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of hatred. It doesn't prevent me from showing up. So I'm imploring everyone, find some courage, strength in numbers, and let's find a way to bring more people into this movement. That's what we should be doing right now. How do we bring more people into this movement to save the democracy? That's what this is about. And so glad to have this time with you. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for your wise words. Thanks everybody for joining the conversation this morning. I hope we get to have you back very soon. There's not going to be a lack of things to talk about. And I would love to be able to focus on some of the things that have been accomplished since this conversation happens, because I do think there are good things that are happening. And if all of us are willing to speak out, we can make those more common. So thank you again for being here. Protests around the country this weekend, everybody.
Right.
We will make sure that the information is in the notes from this conversation, with links to places that you can find out where protests near you are, and grab friends and show up, because those numbers have an impact. They mean something when people see the crowds. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And
thank you, Jen.
Can I just say one last thing, Lisa?
Of course.
And if you're not someone who feels comfortable protesting for whatever reason, and I hear this a lot, that's not me, that's okay. Okay. However, something that you can do is, when you see that protests are happening, post about it, tell folks about it. Because as we talked about, a lot of folks on the Republican side, the MAGA side of things, I shudder to call them Republicans, because it's not, it's a shell of what the party was before, right? But they don't necessarily have the information about what's happening right now, whether it's around tariffs, whether it's around trade, whether it's around these folks who are being snatched off the street. So you have to share the information. If you're not at the rallies, share information about the rallies so people know they're happening. That's really important.
Thank you. That is really important. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you again for being here. We're going to ask you back again soon. And thanks again, everybody, for being here.
Don't lose hope, folks.
And get the information out there across social media and any other means you have possible to let people know what is happening right now that they can get involved in. Stand up and be courageous.
And if this scrappy little dyke can do it, anybody can do it.
I love you. Thanks, everybody.
I'll leave you with that.